The world fades to a hush. Snow settles on the abandoned street like drifting ash. The air feels thick, as if sound itself has frozen. A lone street lamp glows through the cold, its halo trembling in a faint breeze. You see your breath rise as slow white clouds. The temperature presses in, not like a threat, but like a quiet force doing exactly what physics says it should. In this stillness, one question forms. Why does the cold feel so powerful when everything else seems to stop? Tonight, we explore the science idea at the center of this episode, the body, the environment, and the silent contest of heat moving from warm to cold. Not a survival manual, not instructions, just a calm exploration of what actually happens when the world loses power and the temperature drops. In this video, you'll learn how cold behaves, how the body responds, why the environment can distort your sense of danger, and what's really happening around you during a blackout winter event. This is not a guide on how to perform any actions. It's purely a breakdown and illustrated sketch of physics, biology, and perception under changing conditions. The zero grid is about clarity, not crisis, about calm understanding, not urgency. We'll step through the science of cold with the same quiet, blackout-style tone you know, muted scenes, pencil sketches, shifting shadows, and the slow logic of the natural world doing what it always does. What actually happens? Imagine a warm cup of tea placed on a snowy windowsill. Steam rises for a moment, then slows, then stops as the cup cools. What happens to that tea is not dramatic. It's not sudden. It's simply the flow of heat energy moving from a warmer object to a colder environment. Now imagine that you are the warm cup of tea. This is the core mechanism of cold exposure. Your body is constantly generating heat like a tiny biological power plant, while the world around you is constantly trying to equalize that temperature. The colder the environment is, the faster it pulls heat away. Not because it's trying to, not because it's hostile, but because that's how thermodynamics works. Picture a sketch, a person outlined in orange. Round them, the environment is blue. Arrows drift outward from the body to the surrounding air. The arrows don't represent danger. They represent balance seeking. In a blackout scenario, where heat sources are off and the inside temperature slowly begins to match the outside, this exchange accelerates. Walls that were once warm begin to cool. Surfaces release stored heat. The air becomes a neutral conveyor, simply carrying your generated warmth away from you. Inside your body, another quiet shift happens. Your core continues to produce heat, always prioritizing vital organs. Meanwhile, your extremities begin to feel colder first. Not because they are failing, but because your body reroutes warmth inward, conserving energy the same way a city might dim lights in outer districts during a power shortage. This is the mechanism, a graceful, predictable movement of heat from areas of higher energy to areas of lower energy. No panic, no drama. Just physics doing its simple, steady work. Why it feels worse than it is cold changes perception long before it affects performance. The mind experiences cold in a layered way physically, mentally, and environmentally. Picture a room during a blackout. The lights are out. The hum of appliances stops. The world feels emptier, even if nothing dangerous is happening. Your brain interprets silence itself as a signal, not a threat, just a change. When the temperature drops, the first thing you feel is discomfort. Not because your body is in danger, but because your nerves are tuned to warn you early. They act like weather sensors, sending exaggerated signals so you pay attention. This is why cold feels more intense than it often is. Your mind is amplifying the contrast, the way a microphone amplifies a whisper in an empty hallway. There's also the psychology of stillness. In warm environments, we associate heat with safety and activity. In cold environments, We associate coolness with quiet and slowness. During a blackout, that quiet becomes more noticeable. Without the usual sounds or movement of daily life, the cold isn't competing for attention, it becomes the ambient soundtrack. Even the dimming of daylight changes perception. Winter light is blue-leaning, which the brain interprets as cooler. Shadows lengthen earlier. Objects feel farther away. Sketching this out, you might draw the same room twice, once in warm light and once in cold light. The dimensions don't change, but the mood does. Another layer comes from memory. Many people associate cold with discomfort or hardship. When the environment reinforces that memory, like a room slowly cooling, it can feel emotionally heavier than it truly is. This is why cold seems dramatic in the moment, even when the body is still functioning normally. It's not the danger speaking, it's the perception. The environment shapes the way the cold feels, long before it shapes the way it actually affects the body. The hidden science behind it to understand cold in a blackout. Imagine the world as a system of heat reservoirs. Every object, every wall, every surface has stored warmth. When the power goes out, that stored heat begins to flow outward into the colder environment. This is where physics becomes almost poetic. Heat moves in three ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. But instead of listing them like instructions, imagine three simple sketches. First sketch, two surfaces touching. The warmth from the hand flows into the colder object, equalizing. That's conduction, the slow handshake of temperatures meeting in the middle. Second sketch, arrows swirling around a person. That's convection, the movement of air redistributing warmth like invisible currents in a quiet ocean. When warmer indoor air rises and cooler air settles, the room forms layers, each with its own personality. Third sketch, a person standing in a dim room. The air is still, but the warmth radiates outward, the same way light would fade into darkness. That's radiation energy leaving the body in silent waves. In a blackout, all three of these processes remain active. They don't speed up because of fear or stress. They don't care whether you're prepared or not. They simply behave according to temperature differences. Airflow also matters. Even a tiny draft changes how quickly heat leaves a surface. Not in a dangerous way, just in the same simple manner a breeze cools a cup of tea faster than still air. Sound shifts too. Cold air is denser, carrying certain frequencies more efficiently. That's why everything feels sharper, more present. In old buildings during winter blackouts, you might hear creaks or subtle pops as materials contract. These sounds aren't warnings. They're the building adjusting to temperature changes. Light contributes as well. Cold environments scatter light differently, producing blue tones and softer edges. When combined with the stillness of a powerless room, this creates a visual illusion of deeper cold, even when the actual temperature is only moderately low. Understanding these systems helps remove the drama from them. They're not enemies. They're not obstacles. They're simply the world balancing itself with quiet, predictable rules. What this means for you, the real takeaway, is that cold has a narrative, and it often sounds bigger than the underlying science. The initial discomfort is a signal, not a verdict. The environment amplifies sensation, silence, dimness, stillness, but the body continues to generate heat and manage itself long after the mind starts interpreting the cold as significant. When you observe the world during a winter blackout, think about the transfer of heat the same way you think about the movement of water or wind. It's a natural flow. The room cools gradually. Materials release their stored warmth slowly. Your body responds with predictable patterns, shifting circulation, adjusting metabolism, creating small bursts of warmth through everyday movement. Mentally, staying steady is less about taking action and more about understanding the timeline. Nothing happens instantly. Cold exposure is not a movie-style freeze frame where everything turns dangerous in seconds. It's a gradual change, guided by physics that unfold over hours, not moments. If you step back and watch the environment behave, how the air layers, how the walls change temperature, how your senses exaggerate certain cues, you can interpret the experience for what it is, a complex but understandable series of environmental adjustments, almost like watching a natural experiment unfold around you. This knowledge doesn't require you to do anything. It simply gives you a clearer lens. The body is resilient. Heat loss is a slow process. Perception is often the loudest part of the experience. Understanding this helps keep the moment grounded, calm, and anchored in reality rather than instinctive discomfort. So the lesson in all of this is simple. Cold is not sudden. It's not mysterious. It's the world balancing temperatures, the body protecting its core, and the mind interpreting the sensory shifts of a quieter environment. When everything goes wrong, the cold isn't trying to overwhelm you, it's just behaving the way physics demands. If you found this episode of the Zero Grid calming, reflective, and clarifying, join me in the next one. We'll explore another hidden layer of how the world behaves when the lights go out, and what it reveals about the systems we depend on every day.